Hello Serie A fan. Misfiring Italy draw a blank in Gdańsk. As Milan and Inter get ready to dance, we take on the job of Mancini and name our favoured front lines, as well as assessing Italy's chances against the Dutch and previewing all the Serie A weekend action. Plus answering all your questions and nominating a contender for the Gagliardini Challenge in this episode of Scudetto. Hello and a happy international break. No Serie A this weekend, but we do have 2 Italy games to discuss, listener questions to address, and next week's games to preview. But first, let me welcome back Boaz and Kenny. Boaz, how are you doing? What sort of a beer have you got this evening?
Hey Oscar, how are you doing? I'm drinking something called the Pineapple Express today. It's a pineapple tasting IPA. It's quite good, even though it's a little bit gimmicky.
Sounds lovely. How about you, Kenny? Something equally refreshing?
I've actually veered away from the safety of my session IPAs and pale ales. I've gone for a Rauch and Roll. It's by a brewery called Wuha. They're based in the Highlands.
Strong name.
It is, isn't it? It's a smoky porter. It's got a bit of coffee and chocolate going on, and probably good for the weather, which has taken a turn towards the wintry in Scotland recently.
It's a strong name for a strong beer. Don't think I could stomach more than a couple of sips of that. Yeah, I've kind of copped out this week. I've got the Fat Lizard 101, the Finnish Californian again, Boaz.
I love it. One day I will taste it. When COVID is over, I'll come visit you just to drink that beer.
I'm not sure I'd come just for that, but it'd be great to see you. Anyway, we have to talk about the football. So Italy in action twice. They're 15 games unbeaten now, and it's the second game, the first time in 2 years that they've not scored a goal. So the first one was a friendly steamrollered Moldova 6-0. And the second one, a goalless draw with Poland in the Nations League. First of all, Boaz, what did you think of the performance against Moldova? I know it was just a friendly, but still, they hit 6, so can't really knock them.
First of all, the big story from this game is probably tinged in green, i.e. Sassuolo. You had goals from Caputo, who's a hero on this pod, mainly because of his beer drinking, if you ask me. But also, it's a nice story to see him make it all the way to the Nazionale. Other than that, there was goals from Berardi and Locatelli, of course, played. And there was also 2 former Sassuolo players on the pitch. I think you have to praise Mancini for having the national team have set up in kind of a club way. So you do have these so-called reserve players, but they're getting a full game and they're all part of the group, and there's a really good spirit in the team. I don't know if you saw the Instagram videos of Jorginho playing Oasis and kind of butchering the vocals, but still the whole national team were in together. So it looks like there's a really good spirit with the Azzurri right now, and you have to praise Mancini for that.
Absolutely. Speaking of suspect music, there was actually some quite hilarious goal music in that game. I don't know if it was Morrissey. It sounded very much to me like Morrissey, but we got to hear it a few times. Anyway, in the other game, a much more serious approach, much tougher fixture. Italy really should have won this game against Poland, though, shouldn't they, Kenny?
Yeah, they should have done. They played some lovely football, actually, back to front. They absolutely controlled Lewandowski throughout, nullified his threat, aside from that one wonderful defensive block by Emerson Palmieri. But the real talking point here was that they struggled to really create enough sort of clear-cut chances. They did have one absolutely incredible chance for Chiesa. We spoke in the pilots, and I think we've spoken a couple of times in the live episodes about the Gagliardini Challenge, which was on the basis of a horrendous miss that he had last season. No one's quite lived up to that yet. Chiesa hasn't lived up to the high standards that Gagliardini set with that miss, but it was a bad miss. But yeah, I mean that's the main negative from this, because everything else, they look great. They're a really fun team to watch. Like Boaz said, they're set up like a club, really. They don't maybe have the absolute megastars that we've seen Italy have over the years, your Tottis, your Baggios, etc., your Pirlos, but they've got a squad of very, very good players with the potential to become that, and they're just really pleasing on the eye.
I think that in Euro 2020, which will be in 2021, of course, Spain and Germany are favorites, and there's maybe a couple of other nations that are slightly favored over Italy. But the way Italy are playing and the way this team is kind of building up the momentum, I wouldn't bet against them as a dark horse.
I have to say, when I was watching this one, I did think of you, but as Kenny said, a pretty horrible miss from Chiesa, and it was a bad one from Pellegrini as well. And your comment a couple of weeks ago that Italy really need to get Edin Dzeko on loan definitely rang true.
It's funny because I was thinking about that comment recently as well, and I really feel that we might have jinxed him, because ever since we said that, he hasn't scored a goal and he's missed some glaring chances. So Edin, if you're listening, please get some goals.
Yeah, and on the topic of that front three, I actually think it's appropriate that we take a listener question at this point. We'll come back in the Ask Scudetto section to the other questions. But Tifosi Down Under asks, does Mancini actually know his best front three? And who would you guys start with if the Euros were tomorrow? Kenny, you want to tackle that one first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the answer to this one's probably quite obvious in that he doesn't know his main who's going to lead the line. He's kind of chopping and changing between Immobile and Belotti because neither of them really have done it at the national level. I think with regard to his other attacking options, Zaniolo on the right appears to be what he wants, and Insigne on the left. But both of those players are out injured at the moment, so we've seen a different front three in the last two games. We'll probably see a different front three against Holland as well. Who, if the Euros were tomorrow, who would he take? Who would we start? Sorry, as a front three, I'm going to go for Berardi and Caputo. Because Caputo is a hero of this pod, but also because those two know each other inside out. And, you know, if you've got a shortage of options, it seems to make sense to go with players who work well together.
And they fit the system.
And who fit the system, exactly. And on the left, for me, it's a bit of a tricky one. I really wasn't convinced by Pellegrini in that game against Poland. Probably Moise Kean, but I'm not I wouldn't be full of confidence that he's at that level yet.
His season at Everton was a bit of a write-off, and we thought that Ancelotti would be the one to make the change. But now he's moved to PSG, and again, I'm not sure he's going to be starting many games there with the likes of Neymar, Mbappe, etc. So we really have to keep an eye on him for this next season or so to see where he goes and if he really manages to make that jump from a potentially good player to a good player who can start for Italy on the left.
So, Baz, do you go along with that front three, or have you got different ideas?
I mean, it's hard to say right now because, as we said, Zaniolo is injured, so I don't know if he'll be back in time or if he'll be fit for the tournament. But I definitely think that the front positions are the most problematic ones. Unlike past Italian sides, there isn't really a lot of choice up front. I feel that even though Immobile has yet to really shine in the Azzurri shirt, he is probably the closest Italy get to a pedigree striker right now. So I would probably have him at the center of that attack.
I'm going to break the mold here and draft in Kevin Lasagna to play as the target man. Another point to you, Kenny.
I just wanted to say that there was that we did get to see Immobile up front with Zaniolo and Insigne in the first half of that Holland game, I believe it was, when Zaniolo got injured, and they looked very, very good. I know that Immobile did miss chances in that game, but the three of those players really, really gelled, and that's more effective than Italy have been since.
So moving on, Italy are playing Netherlands next in Bergamo on Wednesday. There won't be any crowd there, but there were 9,000 fans at the Poland game. What did we make of it? It did seem to create a pretty good atmosphere.
We've spoken about this in past episodes, but just 9,000 people in the stadium made such a big difference, especially towards the end of the game when, especially the Azzurri, but Poland had a couple of chances as well, and you could really feel the tension that the crowd brings, and you could also see that the players were kind of reacting as part of that.
Yeah, it was incredible, wasn't it? And even though, as we said, it was only 9,000 fans, it was only 20% full. There were times where it felt watching it as if it almost was a full stadium. We don't want to in any way suggest, especially with the COVID situation in Italy and the UK where I am at the moment, to be encouraging thousands upon thousands of people back into the grounds. But it was nice to get a taster of what we can hopefully see again or experience again as football fans once things do start to return to normal.
Yeah. How do we fancy Italy's chances against the Netherlands? Obviously, 1-0 last time they met a month ago. What do you think, Bers?
So when the draw was made, I think Netherlands was probably the one team Italy had to look out for. I have to say that with the new management appointment, maybe this draw is suddenly a little bit easier. De Boer's recent record is kind of laughable. Inter fans will remember him especially for his 16-game stint where he swapped from a 4-man defense to a 3-man defense on the first day of the season, having played all of preseason in one way. His spell at Crystal Palace was terrible as well. And his last appointment before the Netherlands was he took over, I think they were champions, at Atalanta United. And while his win ratio was slightly better than in his previous jobs, he wasn't particularly loved. And I think they were glad to see the back of him. So De Boer is falling upwards because he's now managing one of the best nations in the world.
Yeah, well, at least they should have a better pitch in Bergamo than they had for the Poland game. Mancini was not best pleased with the pitch, was he, Baz? Maybe that was to blame for the glaring misses.
Well, I found his quotes were hilarious. Right after the game finished, he initially said that the pitch definitely affected the game, but we should have scored. We did everything right except put the ball in the back of the net. And as the post-match interviews evolved, his answer became more and more dramatic, where towards the end he was like, we would have won if it wasn't for the pitch. So he obviously swapped. He obviously had some time to think about it and decided that the pitch was his main gripe.
Or he just got fed up with being diplomatic.
Possibly.
It's almost a dishonourable mention, which is timely because we come on to the honourable mention section, kicking off with Marek Kumbula, who made his first start for the Albanian national side. It was a 0-0 draw away to Kazakhstan, so well done to him for the clean sheet. And on the topic of Roma, a dishonourable mention to the virus yet again for infecting Diawara, who's been making it onto our podcast for all the wrong reasons.
4 times in a row now.
Hope he gets well soon. Any other honourable or dishonourable mentions?
Yeah. So we spoke about the Italy-Poland game at length, but honourable mention to Milik for coming on for Poland. He's not in Napoli's European or Serie A squads, so good to see him at least get some action. Although if Udinese director Pierpaolo Marino gets his way and everyone gets 30-man squads for during the pandemic, then maybe he will yet get to see some action. But yeah, he's apparently still likely to go to Roma in January, so we'll see how that pans out. But good to see him get some action.
And I'd like to give an honorable mention while we're talking about Polish players to Walukiewicz. I hope I haven't butchered that too much, but essentially he's a young midfielder who was purchased by Cagliari this summer, and he's played all 3 games. He's played 90 minutes for all 3 games so far this season, and he made his second appearance for Poland. And he's a young player, so a lot of potential, and maybe Cagliari will be able to sell him on.
Good stuff. That's all we've got time for in part 1. In part 2, we will answer your questions and talk about all of the upcoming fixtures.
Hello, Serie A fan. Make Scudetto a part of your weekly football fix. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favourite listening platform, and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at ScudettoPod. We'd love to have you on the squad.
Hello and welcome back to part 2. We're going to be getting into all the weekend's action, but first, hashtag #AskScudetto, the section where we answer your questions. First, we've got a question for you, Boaz. I read that Italy has the most superstitious football fans in Europe. When you were a season ticket holder for Milan, did you have any game day rituals, for example, wearing a lucky item of clothing? And that one is from Paul.
One of my first seasons as a season ticket holder for Milan was when Milan didn't lose for 54 games in a row. So I had a pair of lucky socks, and I was pretty convinced that they were doing the trick. But then I was also season ticket holder for the years between 96 and 97 and 98, which were some of the worst years in Milan's recent history. And so those socks were soon chucked into the bin. And I soon realized that whatever I was wearing or doing didn't really affect the team on the field, fortunately.
Good stuff. We've also got a question from Mike Buchanan for the English one. So I assume that one's for me. Do the two others ever speak Italian to each other when you're planning the show? And does this make you paranoid that they might be plotting against you? The answer is no. All plotting is in English. I'm well aware of plots to overthrow me, and I will thwart any challenges. So give me your best shot, Mike.
Bravo, Oscar. Bravo.
Tentative fighting talk right there.
He's also got a question for you, Kenny. He wants you to tell him a Beppe Signore anecdote.
Okay, I've had a little think about this, and the best that I can do is that I think much like any other young wannabe superstars growing up in the 90s, I tried in vain to replicate Beppe Signore's penalties, so much so that I took this to the club that I was playing at, and after training we used to practice penalty shootouts, and I was adamant that this was going to be the way that I took penalties from now on. So we had our penalty shootouts at the end of training, and 3 times consecutively I tried to do Beppe Signore's one-step penalty kick run up 3 times in a row. I missed the target, and after the third one, my manager came up to me and basically said, "What the f*** are you doing? Just hit it properly."
You can't really argue with that. 0 out of 3. Your coach has got a point.
I still try him though to this day.
Boaz, have you got an anecdote for us?
Strangely, my memories of Beppe Signore, even though I remember him as a great player, but the 2 most glaring memories I have is him playing in midfield for USA 94 throughout, which was very frustrating because he was essentially a goal scorer. But Arrigo Sacchi decided that he needed another guy in the midfield. And also Sven-Goran Eriksson trolling him in a UEFA Cup game and having him warm up for a good 60 minutes without ever playing him.
Good stuff. For the last Scudetto listener question, last week we brought you the news that Martin de Roon was lobbying his club to sign up Gunnosaurus, the Arsenal mascot, after the mascot was let go by Arsenal Football Club. Arsenal have actually extended the contract since then, so good news for Gunnosaurus. But Jesse wants to know, who is your favourite Italian or Serie A mascot? Baz, you want to take that one?
I think the whole notion of mascots in Italy is a little bit less prevalent than, say, in the United States or even Britain at the moment. However, 2 that stick to mind are Alex, which was a Juventus mascot for a few years, which was kind of awkward when Alex Del Piero was getting less and less game time, but the mascot was essentially him. And also Silvio Berlusconi, when he bought Milan. Again, he was trying to emulate the more flashy American system, and he has this devil-looking thing, which I'm not even going to name, but it was kind of ridiculous, and it was on all of Milan's merchandise in the 90s.
Good stuff. Doesn't one team have an actual live bird? I'm not sure if it counts as a mascot.
So Lazio had an eagle for a few years, and sadly the eagle passed away in the summer. So I'm not sure if they've replaced her, but it's true that Lazio at least have a proper animal. And this is a good time to mention that Lazio will be playing Spezia on the 6th of December, and Lazio are known as Le Aquile, and Spezia are known as the Aquilotti, the small eagles. So it'll be interesting to know if the small eagles can beat the big eagle. There
was that nice time when all of Italian football was searching for the eagle because it decided it had enough and left. I'm not sure if either of you remember that, but it was like top news for a good few days.
I mean, technically, they could just get a new eagle every game and just pretend it's always the same one. No one would really notice, let's be honest.
Maybe that's what they did.
I was just going to eagle conspiracy theories on this podcast.
Yeah, it's much quicker to just have the eagle fly out, shoot him out of the air, and bring out a new eagle next week. Less stress.
Either way, I think the Eagle Derby is definitely better than Seagulls versus Eagles that Sky have been keen to try and promote in the Premier League. Anyway, let's talk about some football. So we'll start with the Milan Derby, Boaz. You've got Zlatan Ibrahimovic back. He's recovered, or COVID has recovered from Zlatan. What do you think of your chances in this game?
It's a strange derby, obviously, because of the period we're living in, and it's hard for me to predict today when we're recording what's going to happen next week, simply because every day a new Inter player seems to be going onto the COVID list. And as you said, Zlatan is back, but Milan still have a couple of players out, including Gabbia, who is starting in defense at the moment. And therefore, I'd like to think that because of recent form, Milan can get a good result, but it's very hard to predict. This is going to be the theme throughout the season. Top players dropping out, not because they're injured or something like that, or they're suspended, but because they have COVID.
Yeah, and you might start asking questions, as I know a lot of the Italian media have been doing recently, about what happens if this really does start to have an effect on multiple games. I know that they're talking about potentially introducing like an NBA style bubble system. I don't know what the answer is, but it's not looking great at the moment, is it?
And I have a few qualms with the discourse. Well, last week we went into a lot of depth about COVID, etc. But I'm hearing a lot of even leading journalists talking about how the integrity of the tournament is being damaged because players are missing and stuff like that. To be honest, the integrity of life has been damaged. Everything we know has changed, and we should be so fortunate that we have a league to begin with.
Yeah, can't argue with that. Although you do have to feel for the teams that are worst affected. I'm not sure what the answer is, but anyway, let's talk a little bit more about the on-field action. How should we expect Inter to line up for this game, Kenny? I mean, this is surely a must-win for Conte if he's serious about staking a challenge.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they've. Sorry, I know that we're talking about on-field stuff, but Inter are going to have a real problem putting together a defense for this game. They've got 6 players out now, with Ashley Cole being the latest to test positive for COVID. So I don't know. I don't know if with Zlatan coming back, that presents, possibly puts Milan in the driving seat for this one. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Bastoni as well, if he comes back for Inter. But other than that, I think they'll have Lautaro and Lukaku up front, so they certainly won't be short of firepower. And Barella played in the game last night against Poland, so all intents and purposes looks like he's fighting fit. So I think it might be a makeshift defense for Inter, and that might possibly tilt the balance in Milan's favor. But just back to what Boaz said, it's really, really testing times.
And I think even with this COVID outbreak in the squad, you still look at some of the players that Inter will be able to field and have fielded so far in the season, and you have to say that that's still a pretty impressive side, particularly Hakimi, who seems to have bedded in really well.
Yeah, and maybe even a run out for Christian Eriksen, who I took so much flack for suggesting maybe could be an impact player. Anyway, in the other games, in fact, just before the Milan derby on Saturday, we've got Napoli versus Atalanta.
That's if Napoli show up.
Ooh.
We're fully expecting them to field a squad for this one.
Yeah, they've all tested negative, so clean bill of health for Napoli. It's going to be a cracker, this one. Or having said that, it probably won't be. It'll probably be 0-0. But I don't see how an Osimhen-led Napoli team don't get on the score sheet in this one, and I don't see how Atalanta can stop scoring in any game. I think probably the story of this game is that both teams are relatively at full strength. Insigne is still going to be out for Napoli. He's back in training, but according to all of the reports, it's going to be too early for him to make it back for this one. Atalanta will be without Caldara, so I'm not sure if he even really would have started. But interesting for me would be to see if Bakayoko can make a start. Apparently, he's impressed in training, and it might be fun to see him fit into Rino Gattuso's side. The other player that I would be keen to see make an appearance would be Ilicic. Don't know what the latest is with him, but I do know that 5 or 6 days ago, Gasperini was saying that he's not far away from being ready. So I hope this is the game where we at least see him make the squad for Atalanta, possibly get some time off the bench. But yeah, it should be a really, really fun game.
Yeah, I think that those two teams have the highest scoring so far this season. It's an average of kind of 4 goals a game apiece, I think. So definitely should be fireworks.
This is definitely one of the matches we circled out at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. Anything else to highlight on that one? Or shall we talk about the other Emilian derby? Bologna, Sassuolo. Sassuolo obviously confident after their 6-0 victory over Moldova, as you mentioned earlier, Boaz.
Very good.
What should we expect from Bologna in this one? Kenny, they've got a bit of a crisis going on as well, haven't they?
Yeah, a bit of a injury crisis at Bologna. So they've got, I think that's now four of their sort of key players out with long-term injuries. Mitchell Dykes was supposed to be out for a couple of weeks, but the latest reports are that could actually be 4 months, as much as 4 months. What that might mean actually is that another person who's had a lot of mentions on this podcast, Aaron Hickey, might find himself as the first choice left back until Christmas anyway for Bologna, and I don't think anyone really expected that when he joined the club. But I think I even said on one of our podcasts that I saw him as being one for the future who I didn't really expect to feature much. But they've also got Skov Olsen, who was injured on international duty with Denmark, and Andrea Poli and Gary Medel, who are out for half a season and 6 to 7 weeks respectively, according to reports. So a real challenge for Bologna. But we could see Moussa Barrow back. Apparently he might make it back in time for the game. Like you said, really, Sassuolo, only really, as far as I know, still without Boga, who's making his way back after having had coronavirus himself, which is obviously going to be the running theme throughout these podcasts for the foreseeable, unfortunately. I can only really see this going one way. I think Sassuolo have had a great start. Bologna, a more stop-start. They had that 4-1 win against Parma, but a couple of disappointing results elsewhere. So if I had to pick between these two sides, I'd expect Sassuolo to take 3 points in this one.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to that one, and we've got a full bill of fixtures over the weekend, which we will be watching and we'll round up next Monday. Before we wrap up, we've just got a few honourable and dishonourable mentions. Kenny, you want to? Okay,
yeah, I'll go first with La Padula tattoo. Not sure how well known this is outside of the Twitter sphere, but so La Padula got a tattoo to honor his Peruvian heritage on his mother's side. He got a tattoo of an Inca, or he asked for a tattoo of an Inca, and after he had the tattoo, it's quite intricately done, a relatively attractive tattoo. He posted it on social media with the words, "My origins, half my heart, half my blood." Except that shortly after posting it, hundreds of people got back to him and said, "By the way, mate, that's not an Inca, that's a Native American, wrong continent." So dishonorable mention.
Just how does something like that happen? You'd think you'd take some consultation, surely. Yeah. An honourable mention for Robinho.
I'd love to give an honourable mention to former Manchester City and Milan attacking midfielder Robinho, who returns to Santos for the 4th time, and he's getting paid the minimum wage this time. The club are in financial peril, and he's agreed to come back to kind of rescue them. Of course, they're not getting prime Robinho, but still, it's a nice gesture.
And we've got a couple more dishonourable mentions, unfortunately. Kenny, you want to tell us about Fiorentina fans?
Yeah, I don't want to be overly negative, but this is actually a serious dishonourable mention for some Fiorentina fans who took to social media to insult and threaten Federico Chiesa's 16-year-old brother Lorenzo, who, it should be noted, still plays in the Fiorentina youth setup after his older sibling moved to Juventus. Also want to flag that with an honourable mention for the many Fiorentina fans who outnumbered those to wish him well and to say that they respect he's still a Fiorentina player, and all the best of luck to him, and that they're right behind him.
Yeah, no place for that, obviously. Let's have a slightly more light-hearted, but another dishonourable mention for Fiorentina, for the president, Boaz.
Yeah, Fiorentina acted like a jilted ex-boyfriend this week. First of all, Prade was quoted in midweek as saying that Chiesa it was good to get rid of him, and it should have been done a long time ago, and it was nice to get this monkey off his shoulder. But then Comiso was even more direct, and he was saying he didn't even call. I mean, come on, man. You made a good 60 million euros from this transfer. I think everyone should be happy.
And we've got a couple more honourable mentions, although a slightly sad one, Buzz.
Yeah, it was reported as we started recording that Francesco Totti's dad Enzo passed away due to COVID. The two were really closely linked, and his dad was kind of his inspiration when he started off, known as the Sheriff. Anyway, we send our condolences and much love to the Totti family.
Absolutely. And one for Weston McKennie from Kenny.
Yeah, so this is Weston McKennie, who he's not been at Juventus for a long time, but he's already made clear his intent to send a message to Italian football fans and fans of Italian football about racism. And he's basically highlighting that in games earlier this year, before he was at Juventus, he was jeered with, you can probably imagine the type of noises, which we probably don't want to go into too much detail about. But he also said that when he was back in the States, he fears going out in his car in case he gets pulled over by the cops. And in particular, he said that whenever he makes these statements, people tell him to, be quiet and just get on with his day job as a footballer. He doesn't know what he's talking about, but making it absolutely clear that he's not going to do that, that he wants to use his position to say these things and to highlight these problems. And I just think, great. We need more of this. We need this to keep going. It's not something that was just for a summer. It's something that needs to be a continuous fight. And good on him, and good on Juventus as well for using official club channels to send that message across.
Yeah, we talked about it off air, didn't we? And it's just a ridiculous argument when people are told to just shut up and concentrate on playing football. I mean, Twitter is full of people whose full-time job is not commentating on football, weighing in on these debates.
Exactly.
Absolutely no reason why the players shouldn't be involved. All right, that is all we've got time for this week. We'll be back next week to round up all of the Serie A fixtures. Until then, enjoy the football.